What's going on, people? So, I don't know how many people out there really watch I don't know if anybody really watched like the podcast playlist exclusively or whatever, but you've probably seen, maybe depending on who you are and what you watch of my stuff, you may have seen some of the videos that would fall into it. And so today I put up the video, well, it was released today, the video about like me and getting into wrestling and stuff, right? Because today, the 14th, the whole like anniversary sort of deal there, some number of years or whatever. And I was thinking as I was editing that, like, I should go back and rewatch that Revenge of the Taker pay-per-view and see like what's really going on with that, right? Because when I watched it the first time, and I guess the only time actually, it was like my first time seeing a wrestling pay-per-view, like live or whatever, other than, actually no, it was my first time watching a wrestling pay-per-view, period. Because before that, I didn't know that, I didn't even care to know about wrestling. So it was like probably some huge, bigger than life thing, you know what I'm saying? So now I'm like, okay, let's go watch it now and see what young Tristan may have thought or whatever. And also to do a little comparison between what was it like watching stuff then and what's it like watching some of these things now, as far as like where they are, as far as productions and just all that stuff, right? So the one thing that like definitely like stood out to me was, as soon as you watch it, like you just see like the crowd just seems like, nowadays it seems like everybody's just kind of like, a lot of people are there, but it seems more organized and less chaotic, I guess. There was just like raw intensity of like just people like, oh my god, wrestling, yeah, signs everywhere, people are like practically falling off the rafters and stuff. Because I'm like, are there like guardrails here, or is it just a bunch of people thrown on, not shelves, but like stair things or whatever, bleachers? I'm like, yeah, it was something. It was kind of weird in a way. And then also the other thing that stands out is, back then Vince McMahon was also on the broadcast booth or whatever, his little 3-man team. And it's weird to think that that was a normal thing for so long, because now it's like, it's hard to imagine. It's also like weird that he's just kind of like erased from that whole thing, at least for the time being, when he had such a big hand in like creating it or whatever. But that's another story for another day. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I won't ever get into that. But just know that it's kind of weird when you see him sitting there now, because so much time has passed since he like left doing that or whatever. But either way, as far as like the matches and stuff, right? So the first up thing that they had was like the Legion of Doom, which I always thought was like kind of a cool group of people. And they went up against the Heart Foundation, and it was kind of just like that big, seemed like that kind of like opened the show with something that people want to see, some of the big fan favorites or whatever, let them just kind of get in their little brawls and stuff. So it seemed like it was probably like a decent start to the show, you know what I'm saying? Even if I don't recall having much stake in either person, because again, at the time, these guys were very new to me. But it's also weird in a way to think that all 4 of those people have passed away, right? Like, all of them. It's just weird, you know what I'm saying? Also, I will say Owen Hart was like, he seemed like a bigger dude than I remember. So I don't know if he just kind of like gained and lost weight over time or whatever, because even Goldust was big in some times of his life. But yeah, I always just thought him more like the Chris Jericho style guy, Well, Chris Jericho's kind of a bigger dude now. Either way, up next, we had the Nation of Domination, right? Remember how they used to come out with like those 2 rapper dudes? Like, what was that? It just seems so out of place now. But at the time, it probably seemed kind of cool. I don't know. And I was a big Farouk fan, in the months to come or whatever, got pretty into him, so that was something. Ahmed Johnson made a little bit of an appearance somewhere along the way, so there was that. Overall, it wasn't anything amazing, right? It was just some people that I saw. I was like, oh wow, like D'Lo Brown. Like, I guess this was before he was really wrestling with them, because he was all dressed up all nice and nobody even acknowledged his name, So kind of weird in a way when you look at stuff like that and where people went from there. And let's see, the New Age Outlaws. That was, well, it wasn't the New Age Outlaws exactly. It was whatever his name was. Road Dogg was under some other name because he's doing some other gimmick. And then there was like Rockabilly, which I had forgot Rockabilly was even a thing until right now. And he was with the Honky Tonk Man, who I always thought looked a lot, well, I guess I always thought the Real Big Fish guy looked a lot like him. I don't know if there's any Real Big Fish fans out there, but he's like a smaller version. You know, he's got the same hair, just a little thinner, and plays guitar, like for real. I don't know if the Honky Tonk Man really does, but I've seen, what's his name, like Aaron Barnett or something. I've seen Real Big Fish. Like, that dude can play some guitar. So either way, there was that match, and it was nothing special, right? But again, you look at that and then think, a year or two later, these guys would be freaking huge doing something that, like, you can't even picture them doing this, right? You know, when the DX thing kicked off and all that stuff. And so there was that, right? And now, after that, there was, what was it? There was the Undertaker and Mankind match, which is obviously the whole reason that I even watched this pay-per-view again, because seeing that is what got me, seeing them on Raw the previous day, or the previous Monday, is what got me into watching wrestling and even knowing that this pay-per-view was going to happen. Again, big thanks to the friend of mine that lived in front of me and his, I guess whoever his mom was, I guess, that bought him the little cable box that got all the channels and stuff. Because that was super convenient, right? But anyway, so I'm watching that, you know, and looking at it now, I can imagine, like, I was probably just like, oh my God, this is crazy, right? Because there was a lot of stuff going on in that match that, I mean, if you look at it and compare it to like a lot of the more modern things, it's significantly more tame, right? But at the time, you know, especially if you look at like AEW, because that's like the Wild Wild West over there. But you watch that with the eyes of a normal, let's see, 97, so 15, a 15-year-old in 97, yeah, it was like blowing my mind, I'm sure of it, right? And I remember specifically like the part where Mankind's mask comes off, and I was telling the friend of mine, because he had like stepped out of the room, like, oh my God, his mask got ripped off, like wow, that's crazy. Like, well, I know what he looks like, and he's like, I know what he looks like already. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, it looks like Cactus Jack. And I'm like, what is a Cactus Jack? You know, that was totally new to me until, you know, months to come when he fought Triple H on Raw, which still stands out as a pretty good memory. But all in all, there was some cool stuff happening with like the Undertaker match, and I can see how that would have definitely solidified me being a fan of this whole new wrestling world. I didn't know how long it would go on or whatever, but whatever. And so then past that was the main event, which originally I guess it wasn't going to be the main event, and this is just on the show or whatever, because some stuff happened with like Austin and he needed more time to get ready for his match. So Undertaker, who was the actual champ, like WWF champ or whatever, usually like that match would be last, but this time they went with the Stone Cold versus Bret Hart match as being last. And so it was pretty good. I mean, for what it was, right? You look back at it, you can see like these two dudes who, well, Austin for one, who definitely took like a different working approach in the coming years, whatever, partly because of like knee and neck injuries and stuff. And then seeing Bret Hart, it was weird to me to realize that as big of a Bret Hart fan as I am, I became a huge fan of this guy from seeing very little of his work. Because this pay-per-view was April 97, right? April 21st, 1997. And he left for WCW in like November. So that's what, like, so that's what, 7 months later, you know? So I saw him during that time frame, I guess. And then when he was in WCW, I wasn't really watching a whole lot of that. For like a lot of his time there. And he was injured and all that stuff for a lot of that time too. So that basically didn't happen to me. So all I know of Bret Hart is really like what happened in that 7 months and what I watched of like old pay-per-views over the summer, you know? So he must have been like, even to my younger self, like really good for me to have become such a big fan of him in such a small amount of time. So that was something. But all in all, that was a match that, it wasn't anything amazing, right? That wasn't like showcasing anybody, but it was cool to see it for what it was. And I was looking on like the Wikipedia thing, and apparently there was also like a 20-minute Triple H versus Goldust match, which more than likely was probably like really good, because it seemed like they had like plenty of time to like work out something decent. And since it was like a dark match, usually nobody cares. They're just like, yo, just go out there and do what you're gonna do. So that match, if it's online or whatever, it would probably be worth watching. But all in all, as far as like the pay-per-view goes, I will say this, right? The match quality of that whole show, right? And this pay-per-view was only like 2 hours long, just under 2 hours long, which is crazy, because now those same amount of matches would take like 4 hours, I think. But the pay-per-view, the match quality was not very good. Most of the matches ended in like DQ or something like that. I think two of them actually had like a pin or submission finish, and the other one was just kind of like some trash. So, and even like between the bells, like the matches as they were happening was nothing amazing, right? I mean, I liked the little swerve that they did in like the Legion of Doom versus the Heart Foundation match. That was pretty cool, right? And I'm leaving out the spoilers because in case you want to watch this, you can go into it like mildly fresh and not have it too predicted for you or whatever. But either way, so I saw that, and then I do remember not caring about the match quality because I was just super into it and watching all that stuff. And then as you know, time progressed, whatever, we had to move. And what sucked was like we moved right before, it was like the beginning of October when we moved. And that was right before Bad Blood in Your House, which was like the first cell match with Kane and with the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. And Kane made his first appearance. A huge night, right? And I had to miss it, which was in a way is like a weird coincidence because like I moved away from Virginia at the time and we moved to Missouri, which is why I missed it. And the pay-per-view was actually in Missouri, it was in St. Louis that year, so that's something. But yeah, all in all, it was a cool watch, right? It didn't take too long and all that good stuff. But going back to things like something that just came to mind now, how did Brian Pillman become a part of the Heart Foundation? Because like they showed him briefly on the pay-per-view, and he wasn't in it, or at least it didn't seem like he was. But later, sure enough, he was. Yeah, even like at some point during the thing, they said, "Oh, we've got the whole Heart Foundation here." Blah blah blah, yada yada yada. So I don't know. I might have to go back and look at that, see what the deal was. But yeah, I just thought I would take a slightly different approach from the other uploads that I put into here, whatever, and just do this one as sort of a follow-up because why not? Right? I mean, yeah, why not? So next week I'll get back onto like my normal stuff of various topics that I talk about. I have a whole bunch of videos that have been recorded already and some ideas already jotted down to cover, so I'm not hurting for content in any kind of way. I just thought that this would be something to do. It just kind of came to mind a couple days ago, so whenever I was editing the video that went out today. So, from me to you, have a nice rest of your day or rest of your night, whatever it is, wherever you are. Let me know if you have any suggestions or whatever. You know, I'm almost done with like the topics that I have written down, and I think I have like maybe 3 or so more videos that I've already recorded. So just let me know, and maybe I can work in some other stuff, but I've got a lot of random crap that comes to mind, so again, if you don't have any suggestions, that's cool too, because I've got plenty of stuff to do. From me to you, have a nice rest of your day or rest of your night, wherever you are. I have a little short video to record, and then I'm done recording things for the day. So that took about an hour, not bad. Later, people. So I was thinking about it, right? And seeing me here in this like Adam Copeland shirt, you know, which is obviously an AEW shirt, talking about this whole WWF pay-per-view, seems a little bit weird, but I will say Edge did have some interaction with Undertaker and with Mankind. Both are the reasons I'm watching this, so there is some kind of connection there, but in some ways I do feel like I should have wore a different shirt today.